is this place?" I ask, surveying the walls that are not walls, the floor that seems to be crumbling beneath my feet. "I like to call it the core." "Pretty nice." "Huh," he asks, lifting his arm and flinging it from side to side. "Be careful on the ledge. You don't really want to fall off." Yes, he's right. I couldn't really see it before, but now I can clearly make out a ledge, stretching an unfathomable distance into the darkness. I tilt my head to look over a sharp edge, only to see a dark chasm, glittering with nothing but the spark of curiosity. Ray comes to me and gracefully takes my hand. "Please take a seat, Mona." I whirl around to see an ornate chair engraved with the same designs that decorated the door. The uneasy feeling returning, I slowly lower my body into the seat, wondering how I could have missed such an obvious object in a room that seemed completely empty only seconds before. "Do you remember our conversation in the library? You know, when you chose to be awakened." "Yes," I reply, my thumbs rubbing against the sides of the chair. "I told you then about the purpose of the werewolf species. It was to defeat the shifters, who are all evil, terrible beings that exist merely to terrorize humans." I nod, unsure of where he is going with any of this. "Well, that was not exactly the truth." "What?" "Some are, to be honest. Many of the most ruthless shifters travel to Earth on a daily basis to grab their next meal. Others are not even close to what we have encountered on Earth. I know you have seen many of them here." "Did you say, next meal?" "Wait, Mona. Just let me talk," Ray implores, his eyes searching mine. I fall silent, and after a few seconds he continues. His body straightens as he lifts his arms again. A wash of color begins to appear behind him, painting a strange scene that spellbinds me. As the picture takes shape, I suddenly realize that the room we are in is spherical, with the ceilings and walls slanting into each other, curving around the thin ledge into the vast depths that lay below. "There is a god," Ray looks at me, and then sweeps his gaze across the vivid landscape. Miles and miles of bleak horizons are before us. Not unfamiliar to me as I make out the corner of a sandy beach scattered with battered bodies. So this is. There isn't a name. It can't have a name. If it allows itself to be named, it allows itself to be controlled, and no one can truly harness this realm. Like a wild horse, it lives and dies alone and free, without anyone to hold it back. But anyways, this is besides the point. What I mean to say is, I've never had to question. "Question what?" I ask nervously, bringing my hands together. The scene behind Ray is shifting to reveal close-up scenes within the world, with the first being a lone shifter looking deep into the well that Griffin and I fell into. That there is a god. It's quite a paradoxical privilege to have. Knowledge is painful, to be honest. Ray pauses, his eyes reflecting a dark crimson, almost as if it were a trick of the light. "I hesitate to give it to you. But I have no choice, anyways. It will be over soon." "Ray, you aren't making any sense. What's going on? What is this place?" I move to get up from my seat, but a strange force holds me down. I look down, and in horror see a thick rope strapped around my waist. I whip my face back up to him, and he is smiling sadly at me, his hands still raised. Even now, I'm struggling on how to tell my story. I suppose I don't have to tell it. I could leave you here. Or push you over the ledge. He steps closer, sticking out his foot. It would be so easy. But I can't. There isn't a point. Fate says it won't be so. I begin to breathe heavily, my heartbeat accelerating. I rock within the chair, testing the rope to see how strong it could possibly be. Shifters are more than the werewolves have made them out to be. In fact, every single one of them is a soul, both the corrupted and the pure lumped all together in this waiting room for their final destination. And me, I get to be their leader. I am the caregiver of the waiting room, protecting both the peace and the shifters from escaping their cage. My eyes widen as his face starts to shift along with the scenes around him. His arms immediately fly to his cheeks, as if trying to hold himself together. "Just a minute longer. I can wait. Don't want to," he whispers to himself. "Show me who you are," I say, my hands working at the rope. It is too strong, however, and I know that it would be pointless to keep trying. But most of all, I am concerned about Ray's evident pain. It grips me, and I can't take it any longer. Let it go. There is no response as Ray clutches at his head, struggling once again. Just let it." His hands move to cover his eyes and an almost lightning-like flash appears in the room, causing me to blink several times and look at the ground. When I finally look up, I nearly jump with my chair into the abyss. Ray, what happened to your eyes? Instead of his green eyes, he now possesses a pair of ruby red eyes, glowing with the same demonic intensity that I am so familiar with. The rest of him is the same Ray I am used to, but that one feature frightens me beyond anything else. Shivers run up and down my spine as he almost takes a step forward. Then backs away at my expression. I guess there's no going back anymore. I can't be Ray, just as you can't be Mona. Ray pauses. I will finally take on my role. Mona. I am the enemy. I am what the prophecy calls the wolf with the red eyes. I have been given a mission by God, and I intend to finish it, while at the same time doomed to certain failure, as it is written. I only stare at him, my teeth chattering involuntarily as the cold sweeps in like the snow upon the backgrounds of the sphere, each crystallized piece of water fluttering to its death in the gray valleys. When the true God created this world, he made me as well. He made hundreds of servants, built this large castle, and gave me companions to counsel me as I led this kingdom. At first, there were no troubles. Our land flourished, nutrients-rich with emotions dripping from the treetops and souls practically frolicking among the green plains. Everyone could use feelings of joy and happiness as proper sustenance. No had to leave, or wanted to leave. But he did not leave me in charge of this world without conditions. He gave me a piece of paper, detailing what was to happen when the first shifter crossed over into the foreign worlds that lay past our borders, that I was not allowed to open until the time came. A long time passed, a time that could only be described as peaceful and blissfully temporary, when I was living a life that was as stagnant as the raining clouds over our terrain. But after a while many more souls were entering our world and there were not enough nutrients growing to support the population. Some would fight each other for a single piece of fruit, while others would intimidate shifters into relinquishing their hard-earned nutrients. This went on for a while, and soon a brash, rebellious shifter decided to take matters into its own hands. It left, sneaking through the gates into oblivion, and I thought we would never see that particular shifter again. Well, I was wrong. It appeared again, at the edges of the gates, holding some strange sphere-like objects. When other shifters came to look, he released the spheres, all of which released a wealth of feelings that invigorated the shifters that surrounded it. They were introduced to many emotions that were not available within our realm, such as jealousy, greed, and anger. The reason why shifters need emotions is to make them feel somewhat alive while they wait, allowing them to retain some of what their soul originally consisted of. However, these ugly emotions ignited a fire within their own souls, and fiercely burning passion that far exceeded the satisfaction one would get from a single grain of happiness. Since fire is contagious, the news spread quickly about the shifter's new mysterious energy source. I knew about it already, having this room to survey the kingdom as a whole at any time I would like. Not worrying about anything. I just let it go. I never seriously thought that the shifter would even make it much longer when fed with such impure emotions, much less incite an entire rebellion against me. Of course, I severely underestimated its influence, as it led thousands, against my orders to stay away, into the oblivion under the pretense of finding a land with wealth in feelings beyond measure. Scared by the events that had taken place, I practically ripped over the letter that contained the true God's message. Within it, I found the prophecy, a description of the real world, a silver ring, and some more instructions. I was to travel between worlds to monitor the shifters, as their taste for humanity could not be quenched, and watch for the appearance of werewolves, who were an apparent threat to the shifter society. I was very disturbed by the information, but was secretly excited to leave and see something beyond what I have seen in my very strange crystal ball. When I finally took the first steps out of my kingdom, leaving the council members behind to watch over everything, my world was completely and drastically shifted before my eyes. There was spontaneity. There was a rich aroma of adventure and excitement. With my silver ring, I could easily become one of the humans, mingling among them in ways I thought could never be possible. The ring allowed me to take on a solid form, any solid form, and I used it often. I experimented, time and time again, with different animals and different types of people, learning the customs of the world until I knew them better than I did my own. And even as I was enthralled, the other shifters were satiated to an even greater extent. Everything they ever could want in a dinner menu was available, and soon their appetite grew even larger. It was hard to return to my kingdom. When I did, I went straight to my huge crystal ball to see the earth and study more about it. I became obsessed, and for hours on end scoured the ends of the earth for any sort of new curiosity that would strike. But at the same time, I did so with a heavy amount of guilt. Because I knew about the prophecy. I knew about fate's wishes. And when the framework is laid out, all you can do is build upon it and look down from above, wishing and hoping for the impossible. I knew, yet I just watched the world, watched the shifters grow fat with sadness and love and pain and fear. Many more went to join the others, lured by the sweet promises Earth offered. As this went on, I noticed that the shifters down in Earth had changed. They were growing savage, unsatisfied with the taste of a certain feeling but wanted it all. Those who stayed in our realm began to be more satisfied with their portions than the ones who left, staying full for longer periods of time. Shifters on Earth would not just take pieces of the emotion within a particular human anymore, but completely take over both the emotion and the person's identity, swallowing it all with one big bite and then wreaking havoc among the other humans that surrounded them due to the shifters not being able to control such a sophisticated body. I would continually go back and forth between worlds, trying to convince many of them to return. No one did. But then the werewolves started to pop up everywhere. Finally catching on to the cause of all the new destruction, they took it upon themselves to liberate humankind from the monsters, being able to smell their recently devoured emotions quite easily. I learned later that they also had obtained the prophecy, being given to them by God, which gave them a sense of direction as to how to deal with the unseen enemy. As for me, I just tried to prevent any more shifters from leaving the realm. The shifters on Earth were growing far too dangerous, their eyes pulsing a deeper red with every soul they consume. It is the ultimate sin to consume a soul that has not been judged by the true God. The werewolves did a pretty good job to control the shifters for a while. Because of the spears, many were being killed quickly and others were hunted down through the physical bodies that they took over. Still, many were escaping the realm and coming to Earth, having their fill and gaining the dark red eyes. As you can see, I have been guilty. Once, I had a sip of love, and immediately got sucked into its beauty and richness, accidentally drinking far too much than I should have. The human lived barely, but I am scarred, and probably will be forever. And then you came. I knew immediately who you were and what you were. My crystal ball room immediately suffered a blackout right after your birth, and thereafter almost always was zoomed in on you. At the time, you meant destruction to the ones I was watching over. You were going to end everyone's existence, including mine. I was a coward, however, and most afraid of my own termination. I knew I had to kill you if we wanted our lives, if you can really call it that, to continue. We tried countless times when you were young. Precarious steps were taken and outlandish plans were made, all of which somehow failed before they even reached your doorstep. It was as if your house was protected by an invisible barrier. I realized later that it was fate's doing. I learned the inevitability of my actions, but not before I committed the worst deed. I sent one deathly shifter after you when you and your parents went on vacation. That decision would haunt me forever. I growl, lashing against my bonds. As if they were made of steel, they don't even move. As the initial wave of anger courses through my veins, I sit and wait for reasoning to return for me. Throughout this entire astounding confession, what I don't feel from this person who wants to kill me is hostility. Why did it haunt you? How did you find it within you to feel regret if you are only an empty shell of a soul? I ask weakly. Ray shakes, his eyes widening regretfully. Because I got to know you. Mona. I became a shell of a human, to try and get close to you, to strike when the opportunity presented itself, and failed in the worst kind of way. He finally takes a step closer to me, lowering his arms. I feel the bonds loosening, slowly, as he lets his guard down. Before you, and before Earth, I had nothing to call myself. I had no identity. Just like the rest of the shifters. You, and my brother, gave me a name. It was a long process, but I integrated myself into the human lifestyle. I needed to get close, and my faithful crystal ball told me that a werewolf named Xavier was involved. In order to get affiliated with him, I would have to tamper with Xavier's memories, making him think I was related to him in some way. After observing him for a while, I decided that the best way to do that would be by taking the place of his brother, who had just died at the hands of a crazed werewolf. All I needed to do was to make Xavier think that Ray had survived, and not only that but had become a werewolf in the process of battling with it. But you said he changed you. Not that you had unintentionally become a werewolf. Remember? Yeah, that was a lie within a lie. I'm not really sure why I said it. I guess I wanted you to feel sorry for me. Fancy that. He scoffs, his face full of self-derision. I have to say, Mona, I was quite fascinated with you. When Xavier moved the pack into the mansion that was so close to your orphanage, the only thing I would do at nights was wonder at your behavior that I was able to observe when I could sneak away to the other realm. You were always so strong. There was never one weak moment I could sense from you. I wanted a taste of such resilience, but I could never make myself get close to you. I felt dirty and impure, which is a difficult thing to reconcile when approaching someone with such a powerful soul. When Xavier brought you to the mansion, I knew my time was approaching, but I just could not go through with any of my plans. It was over before it even started. And Xavier mating with you. I could have never imagined that things would turn out like that. I really liked Xavier and admired his brave and honest character, which made it so much harder to try and do something to you behind his back. Did you ever try? Yes. At the awakening. I had poison made in a separate bottle, but then mixed the bottles up at the last minute. It was a silly mistake, and one that I couldn't have possibly made on my own. But it was certainly the last attempt. That's for sure. I was not going to risk anything again, especially blowing my cover. Because my cover, and my name that I borrowed, has become what my entirely too long existence has consisted of. It is as if I waited a countless number of years to have a life that was truly worth the wait. The bonds slip to the floor, but I do not move. Ray steps even closer and crouches down so we are face to face. Although his eyes look so beautifully foreign, they are tearing up with the same familiarity that I am so used to. I know it's Ray. I know him. And now fate says I have to try to kill you, and I can't, he whispers hopelessly, leaning his head slowly forward and resting on my knees. Because you deserve to live. Just as the shifters deserve to be passed on to their judgment day. They have been kept waiting for far too long. He looks up at me and his eyes shift between green and red, unintentionally reflecting his will. Ray, please, tell me about what will happen if I complete the prophecy. There is silence for a minute, as he collects himself. Looking up at me, he firmly gets up from his position. The werewolves, shifters, and this world will cease to exist as you know them. The shifters will be able to move on towards judgment and will not wreak any more havoc in the outside world. The werewolves will be without purpose. You will live. I'm sure of it, because you are tangible, unlike the rest of this world. What are you saying? I cry, standing up as well. I walk closer to him and grab his arms. You are tangible as well. You are real. He only smiles, the tears fading away from his features. The scar on his face catches my attention as he turns away. Is it a lie if you believe in yourself with your soul? Can you define yourself, or must you let others define you? I pull on his arm, trying to turn him back towards me. I don't need the proof of being defined either by myself or by others. It won't matter for much longer. Ray finally turns back, and in his other hand he holds a crown. A dark red jewel pulsates at the tip. This is yours. The jewel used to be a deep sapphire, but has been polluted over time. Throw into the chasm, and live. I stare at the crown, suddenly hit by a wave of remembrance. Suddenly it comes to me, the visions and memories all consolidating together, until it resembles one cohesive message. I saw you. Ray. He glances up at me. What? How could you, possibly? I've been having visions. Visions of this world. And now I realize, they were of you. We are connected. Ray, through fate. How could I possibly throw you away? I don't care what you've done. Mona, it doesn't matter anymore. Sure, we can prolong it for a few days, and the servants can catch me having committed treason against the safety of the realm and throw us all into a terrible prison for 100 years until we escape somehow and come back to this same place, because we have to. Don't you understand? Just as I cannot push you into the chasm this very moment. You cannot avoid your own role. And I know you. You cannot willingly leave this many lives at such a state of unrest for your own selfish gain. You are more than that. I look at him, tears starting to flow, and reach a hand out to take the crown. As my hand closes around the cold metal, my mind burns with the pain of the inevitable. Should I be strong for myself, as I always have been, or be strong for the benefit of innocent souls? Both decisions will be like a dagger stabbing me deep within my heart. A flash of movement catches my attention and I turn my head to see the images reflecting a group of people rushing through a narrow hallway. I look back at Ray, alarmed, but he moves his hand quickly to dispel the image. Do it now. Mona. You will never get the courage again. I need you to do this for the sake of my realm. Ray moves to the side, his hands pushing me towards the edge of the ledge. I look over once again to see complete darkness. Where does the chasm lead? I ask Ray, frightened to move any closer. There is a dark, eternal fire at the bottom of the chasm, in the core of the castle. It can destroy anything, so be careful and be brave. I am here for you. I look back at him, unable to stop the waterfall, and then turn to the crown. I finger it in my hands, marveling at its beauty. The same designs from before are etched on the sides, and the jewel glows with a beauty beyond measure. And I must destroy it. Destroying a world that has existed for years and years before I existed and the werewolf clan existed and maybe even before time truly came into effect. But how long then must the shifters have suffered? I think back to the first shifter I saw, resting at the base of a tree. It looked so peaceful, so innocent. Should I rob it and others of their possible salvation? How could I be so cruel? I'll do it. I will let go of the crown. No time for regrets. No time for second thoughts. Now, do it now. My fingers loosen. I say a prayer, something I am unused to doing, hoping that I am doing the right thing. Not that it matters. Because the wait is finally over. The crown starts to slowly slip past my index, then my middle finger, then my ring. Mona. The door bursts open to a number of people, racing into the room like their lives depended on it. Leading the group is a person I know all too well, and we make eye contact immediately. Xavier. I crumble to my knees, unable to contain my fear as it consumes my entire being, leaving me drained as fate guides my fingertips. If it doesn't matter, then why does it hurt so badly? The decision to live. I stare at the man before me, my fingers tightening over the crown until the tips of my finger turn white. My knees buckle as a sudden weight as strong as an avalanche pounds against my shoulders. I can't tell the reality of it, but in this one moment, it doesn't seem to matter. In my delirium, I try to form his name with my lips. The man yells something and starts running towards me. I feel my body slip as rocky bottoms shift into an eternal void. The weight drags me into the abyss, burying my vision into the darkness. There is no time to think or even breathe, yet my descent seems to occur in slow motion, my arms flailing without command or control. And all the while I am watching through the lens of a camera, powerless as a glass wall separates me from my body and reality. Until arms encircle my shoulders, bringing me upwards into an unfathomable warmth. The familiar scent disarms me, and my eyes blink as I start to realize what is happening. He came back. He found me. I had almost forgotten his face and touch in the face of such alarming discoveries. My heart aches as I am now overwhelmed with discomfort and reason brought upon by his presence. Robbed of my willpower, I surrender myself to his embrace while turning my body into his chest. For a few moments I listen to his beating heart, the deep breaths as his shoulders shake. I almost allow myself to smile as his breathing steadies. This is why. Hey, he whispers in my ear, tightening his arms around me. You can't leave me that easily. I smile weakly, strangely not hating myself for agreeing with him. The warmth from his body seems to permeate into my heart, and my fingers slowly relax over the gilded crown. After a few seconds I let him slowly release me, looking around the room. It still has retained its spherical shape and steep cliffs, but the scenes that flashed across the rounded walls has vanished. The room appears empty in every sense of the word, and for a few seconds I wonder if any of the past events actually happened. None of it truly seems real. Griffin and Danae inch towards me, while Jake and Wes stay back to glare at Ray. What were you two doing here? Where have you been? Wes loudly asks. He tries to look strong, but we can all see his knees shaking. I glance at Ray, alarmed to see that his eyes had returned to its normal color. He is shaking his head nervously, muttering to himself. As the others gather around me, I crumble under the weight of their stares and hug the crown to my chest. I can tell them. Even if I know they can help, even if it will make me feel 1,000 times better, my lips just won't form the words. Or any words, for that matter. Why didn't you help Mona yourself? Xavier furiously snaps at Ray. He turns away from me and starts marching towards Ray with a dark glare. Ray just stands there, totally frozen, a lone figure against the backdrop of the dark, desolate walls. It's okay. I caution him, reaching for his wrist. It's not his fault. How is it not his fault? Xavier asks, still turned away from me. His wrist twists out of my grasp, fingers slipping around my own. He's been through a lot. I say softly, questioning myself as I defend him. Should I just let the others get mad at him? Something prevents me from telling the truth. The truth will hurt. We make eye contact again, and he simply stares at me, green eyes devoid of any emotion or truth. The fire within me begs for the unveiling of the facade, the fabric holding us together in the patterns of fate. But then the fire fades as Xavier's warmth snakes through my arm and the comfort reaches me again. I suppose you have. Wes speaks up, a smile finally crossing his features. I am glad that you are safe and with us again. You need to tell us all you've learned about what we are dealing with, Ray repeats, his eyes darting around the room and his mouth twitching. He starts moving towards the door as Danae and Jake follow him. Their eyes seem more guarded, as if they are expecting something. You know, with the crazy shifters and all that. Wes replies casually, walking languidly to the door. And we would also like to know what this room is, and why you two are here. It's the Shifter's dungeon. Ray replied quickly. It's where they have been keeping me. He throws another glance my way as if daring me to deny it. Xavier leads me to the others. His hand tightening around mine. Let us talk about it where we can have some light. We wouldn't want the shifters to come back anyways. I try to make contact with Ray again before we leave the room, but Xavier is dragging me with such force that I don't even catch a glance. There are so many questions I have, but the biggest one that looms over me is what now? The web of lies is being spun and one gust of wind could completely destroy it. We proceed through the elegant hallway and then through the double doors into the large room we first entered. It looks different now, with a little bit of light wafting through the windows and the small candles burning brightly. I can see the detailing of the design and furniture, all with an old-fashioned feel to it. Being able to see more of the castle, however, doesn't make me feel safe or even welcome. And even as we exit the castle, I get the small, eerie feeling that we are being watched. Ray is walking ahead, leading us around the perimeter of the castle. His steps seem shaky and unsure, and for moments I catch the edges of his skin blurring. Then I blink my eyes and it seems to be just a trick of the light. The others are walking ahead of us, seemingly unaffected by the strangeness in the air. But I know Xavier can sense it, for his other hand has balled into a tight fist. You feel that? He leans down and whispers into my ear. Within that whisper I can feel the smoothness of honey dripping down his words into my willing ears. Even though I know it's not intentional. I feel a buzz from him that is far different from what he is talking about. Instead of responding to him, I catch myself staring at his lips. Yeah. I do. I turn my head away, a blush forming on my cheeks. Thankfully Xavier doesn't pursue it, and as I recover his hand never leaves mine. I don't want to leave this. Ray takes us to a small cave in a mountain beside the castle. I look around us, the trees blocking my view of the towering turrets. Once again, the area seems free of life and movement, and I hear nothing but the roar of the wind. But I can shake that feeling, and I wonder if it comes from something greater than what we can understand. The cave is small and intimate, the few of us standing shoulder to shoulder in order to fit inside. I lean back against the wall, confused as to what Ray means by bringing us in here. Okay, so what do you want to know? Ray asks, sitting cross-legged on the dirt floor. The others slowly slide to their knees. Xavier's expression turns to stone, and he lets my hand slip from his. Tell us about your imprisonment. He says, leaning back against the wall with his eyes focused on Ray. Ray starts to talk, weaving a tale about how the shifters dragged him to a dungeon and kept him there, feeding him sparingly. I tune out to his story, only paying attention to the werewolves. They look so strong, and determined.